All right, I think we might be live. And hello if you're joining us today. I'm just going to confirm on my phone here. Make sure we're actually live. It's looking good so far. I just like to do this to make sure I'm not just talking and we're not recording or talking without anyone else here. Well, welcome to the weekly analytics office hours. Always great to be here, and we're starting to do these on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern now. We're here to answer your questions about maybe a technical topic related to analytics, perhaps a tool like Power BI, Python, SQL, or another tool. I've got those tools ready to go. I've got some sample data sets ready to use if we need them. So if you've got a technical question, or even on the methodology side, also technical but not necessarily specific to a tool, and you want to brainstorm an approach to a certain type of problem or business challenge, let's hear your challenge, and I'll do my best to come up and help you kind of refine an approach for it as well. You might have questions about data science techniques. Would love to answer your data science questions. Would love to answer your analytics career questions. If you're here and you're trying to get here and you don't know how to get there, I would love to give you some tips based on my experience. And we can even talk about analytics soft skills. So we're talking about communication, leadership, project management, attention to detail, stakeholder management. All of these things are pretty much half the battle when it comes to analytics. If you're not doing those things well, it's going to be really hard to advance as an analyst. So all of those are important, and I would love to answer those questions for you. Now, typical disclaimer here, don't include any personal information or sensitive information about your company. Keep it really high level, nothing that you wouldn't want to be shared with the rest of the world, because at the end of the day, we share these, post them on YouTube so that folks that aren't able to make it today can also view it. So with that said, we are ready to see your questions, and I'm going to do my best to answer them. We had some fun questions last time. Really enjoyed the questions about what does an analytics career look like? How do you get started, and then how do you develop from there? That was a fun conversation. And we also talked a little bit about the YouTube videos that we have available. We talked through some of the most popular videos on the channel, and what you might be able to get out of those. And so I hope you're able to check those out. They're all recorded. We have a whole playlist of live analytics office hours from the past if you weren't able to attend. And the plan today, again, if we don't get any questions, we always stop and answer questions if we get them. But if we don't have any questions, the prepared topic today is to continue to go through some of the remaining YouTube videos that we've done in the past so that you have an overview and you kind of get a sense for which ones might be most interesting for you. I think all of them could be very relevant for any analyst or data science, but there might be specific topics that you want to prioritize, so we'll talk through those. All right, well, with that said, let's head over to the YouTube channel. Value-driven analytics. All right. Well, here we are. So if you go to the Value-Driven Analytics channel, you should see our home screen here. Hopefully that's coming through. And we went through some of the popular videos, the definitive guide to data analytics. If you are trying to learn analytics and you don't have any experience here, or even if you do and there's a particular tool here that you're trying to learn, these assume no prior knowledge. Again, analytics overview of the series, overview of analytics in general, about an hour and a half or so, analytics overview, Excel, Power BI, Python, SQL, data science, being able to build predictive models, for instance, and then the analytics soft skills that we're talking through. an introduction to all of those. A pretty thorough introduction. A lot of these videos are an hour and a half. Some of them are up to 4 hours, a little lengthy. Some of them will take you to not just the beginner level, though. It'll take you to, for instance, the Power BI one. If you go through this, we cover some at least intermediate, maybe even some advanced features as well. So it's very exhaustive. Last time, I believe we were going through quite a few and talking through some of these analytics leadership videos. This is for people who are maybe managing an analytics team or analysts who aspire to be a leader. You know, you've got to start somewhere, and that's where this video will probably talk about here. The 4-step roadmap to analytics leadership comes in. You've got to start somewhere. Start by just being an informal leader, and if you do that well enough and often enough, hopefully someone's going to take notice, and eventually when formal opportunities come available, they're going to be thinking about you if you're doing a really good job with that. So we talked through this, again, geared toward aspiring leaders or practicing leaders today. I think we kind of ended around this people versus project-oriented management. And I recommend just focusing on your people, developing your people into really informal leaders and analysts that you can trust so that you don't have to be a micromanager. You've developed them so much that you can give them just about any project and they're able to handle it on their own. And so you spend less time on the maybe the project-oriented management, following up and looking over every single thing. You still need to look over some things, but you've spent so much of your time developing your people that there's less of that needs to be done. They're trained and they know how to manage, and they're inspired to manage to deadlines and to work with their stakeholders directly and to communicate their work on their own very well, and to do their own checks and to come up with a robust methodology on your own so they just can handle more on their own. And so you don't have to spend as much on doing all that yourself and looking over all that yourself, being kind of a micromanager in some ways. Highly recommend becoming more and more a people-oriented manager, but there's definitely some project management that every manager needs to do as well. I'll say that. All right. Well, then we talked about, or I think we might have stopped here. We have a video. If you just don't even know what data analytics is, we've got a video for you here. It's a short video, just high level ways that analytics is used. And I believe that last time we talked about, we started to maybe get into this plan on how to become a manager. So just a high-level overview is become very efficient, and we've got a video on that, how to become as productive as possible with your current work. Carve out enough time where you can proactively pursue proactive analysis that maybe you're not being asked to do, but that would add a lot of value to the company. The more you do that, people are going to pay attention. And proactively pursue general leadership opportunities. Look for opportunities to better your company, identify them, pursue them, do a good job with that, and repeat. And the more time, that's why it starts with being productive, the more time you can carve out for things like that, the more examples of leadership, informal leadership you can show, and then ultimately share that with your manager that you would like to be considered for formal leaders, if that's something you're passionate about. Hopefully they'll be able to tell by your actions. Hopefully they'll be proactively having quarterly or at least annual conversations with you to ask you what your goals are. But if they don't, proactively share that you're interested in becoming a people leader someday. And especially if you've been showing the informal leadership. Again, once a role comes available, sometimes it takes some time, they should keep you in mind for that. I believe we talked about assessing, doing an analysis of an investment before making the investment. We've got a video about that. Looking at the centralized analytics model, sometimes called a center of excellence model, versus a siloed stakeholder or a siloed stakeholder analytics team. And we kind of recommend a combination of those that we, I believe, talked through. And we talked through that more in this video. If you're interested in how should I set up my the org chart behind my analytics team. Should I have individual analysts reporting to the business, or should I have them all part of one group? We would recommend having them all part of one group. And we talk more about that in that group, in that video. And then we do a comparison of onshore versus offshore. And we just talk about some considerations that if you are thinking about maybe building out an offshore team, some things you want to think about, some pros and cons there. Talked about levels of analytics maturity, one of my favorite topics. How do you advance from this early or low level of analytics maturity where a lot of things are being done manually, you're not doing the advanced analytics, to a world where your reporting is automated, it's interactive, and so your analysts have time to do really advanced analytics, maybe even getting into not just machine learning, but like deep learning and natural language processing. Some of the most advanced stuff out there. How do you do that? Well, we talk about the 3 different levels of analytics maturity here, and then again, this is where we really lay out our roadmap of if you want to go from one level to the next, how do you do that? We've got a 7-step roadmap, proven roadmap right here that we can walk through for you, or you can watch the video. We have an article on our website as well that kind of summarizes that video too. All kinds of resources to help you go from one level of analytics maturity to the next. And we even have an analytics maturity assessment on our website too. 34-question quiz that we've been talking through in previous analytics office hours. You can take about 10 minutes to fill it out. You'll get a customized report telling you your organization's level of analytics maturity on a scale of 1 to 3, broken out by area, with recommendations on how to advance based on how you answered those questions. It is a great resource if you're trying to improve the state of analytics at your firm. Here's a kind of a neat video, especially for leaders, but also for analysts in general, just to know what industries are using analytics and how are they using it. So we've got a video here as well. And here's the thing, any one of these you can click on. I'll click on for analytics leaders only. There's actually more videos even that's listed there. So we saw, I believe, through here, you can see there's a whole lot more videos that might be relevant for a leader here. Project prioritization, data presentation, and beyond. Tons of videos that are relevant for leaders here. So we've kind of put anything that could be relevant for someone who's managing an analytics team in that playlist. All right, well, we're back to the home screen now, and now let's go through this. This is really more geared for analysts, could be relevant for leaders as well, but it's all around those soft skills that we were talking about at the beginning that we're happy to answer questions about here. Starts with leadership. We just talked through this roadmap to becoming an analytics leader and how you can do that even as an individual contributor by practicing informal leadership. Then we basically have this is the same video that's the last video in our definitive guide to data analytics here, covers all kinds of soft skills. Just maybe spends about 5 to 10 minutes on each soft skill. And it goes through it in a unique way where the first 20 minutes or so are spent talking about how an aspiring analyst, the soft skills and the things that they can do to try to get to their first analytics role, to land that first role. And then the next 20 minutes are around maybe someone who's 0 to 2 years into their role, trying to just become a successful analyst, to exceed expectations at their current level as a data analyst, kind of an individual contributor analyst. And what are some of the soft skills and things that you're going to need to master to really become successful in your role? And then the last 20 minutes or so are spent for the analyst who's been in their role for a while and aspires to get to the next level, maybe senior analyst or a management level. What are some of the soft skills that you can apply in order to help you with that, with that career change? Well, one of the important things from an analyst perspective is to be able to present your data well. That's very important to the executives and your stakeholders as well. They need to know less about your methodology. Most of the time, stakeholders and executives trust the analyst. There's just a natural amount of trust because you're bringing the data, and so a lot of times you don't need to go over and convince them on your methodology. They trust you. Give maybe a high-level overview. If you can share your methodology in a way that non-technical stakeholders can understand, wow, that is really good. But if you can't, if that's hard for you to do at this point, you just tend to go right into the details and never stop. You might want to steer clear of it, or just mention your methodology at a very high level, and then really get into the insights and even more so the recommendations. We talk about how you should start with an executive summary. You never know how much time you're going to have with an executive. And so you want to get out those main, especially recommendations, so that they know what they need to do, and then they can move on. So that's data presentation, a lot of good tips in there. Remember, the first step to becoming a manager that we recommended was becoming more productive and more efficient with your time. Well, this video is all about how you can do that. So check out the Boost Your Productivity. These tips apply especially to analysts, but a lot of them could come into play for any role. And then another thing as an analyst you often face is you get all these project requests, a lot of times more than you have time for. So how do you handle that? Well, in this video we talk about project prioritization, and we talk about how you can use Planner or other project management tools like Asana to really do some effective stakeholder management, where you're meeting with your stakeholders on a regular basis, reviewing all the projects, prioritizing them, which is a good video for that. Then remember, so all these kind of relate to each other. Remember how we said in this data presentation that your stakeholders generally trust you? They do, generally, from the get-go. But if you do something to violate that trust, it can quickly be eroded for yourself and the rest of your organization's analysts as well. So it's really important to apply sanity checks, double checks, to check your work before you present it. And that's what we talk about, several different ways to assess your work, to really, nobody's perfect, but lower the risk of facing attention to detail errors. In analytics, as an analyst, oftentimes on a daily basis, you're facing a trade-off between three factors. One is the rigor of the analysis, or the accuracy of the analysis. Right? That is very important, to make sure your analysis is right, basically. The recommendations you're making are truly the best way to look at the data. It's good data, it's accurate data, and so we can really trust your analysis. That should be priority number one. But a trade-off that sometimes you face is timeliness. Right? Think about, in order to make sure your analysis is correct, you need to do all your double checks and your sanity checks, all the things that previous video covers, our attention to detail video. And that adds a little bit of time, naturally. Now, we talk about how you need to make sure your checks are efficient, so it's a very slight trade-off, it can be, but there's a little bit of a trade-off there between accuracy and timeliness, and we always want to put accuracy above timeliness. If you get the analysis done right away, but it's wrong, it would be better if you hadn't done the analysis at all. You might end up recommending a decision that takes your organization to a worse point, and nobody wants that. So it's very important. Priority number one should be accuracy. You want to hit your timelines, but if you're not going to hit a timeline and you're thinking, well, let me just take a shortcut or skip these double checks so I can get it done, no, I would not recommend that. As soon as you recognize that you're not going to hit a timeline, reach out to your stakeholders, let them know. Try not to make a big practice out of it, but that is the best thing to do in that situation. Or here's the third thing that you could potentially lever to pull here and trade off. Well, another aspect here, so okay, you're running into some kind of an issue that could impact the accuracy or rigor of your analysis, and you're coming up on the deadline and you don't think you're going to hit it. Well, another option is to reach out for help. Sometimes if you've got analysts at your organization that can help, And if you don't, that's where our company, Value Driven Analytics, could come in. We have a 1 hour consultation that you can book on our website to get help with troubleshooting, with advice for your project. So especially if you're in an organization where you don't have other analysts working there that you can go to when you need help, boy, that is a great resource for you. 1 hour consultation on Value Driven Analytics website. It's one of the 8 services that we offer. But all that to say, look, if you're in that situation, timeliness should come before what we'll call independence. So you want to become more independent over time. Most organizations don't expect you to be independent, to be able to handle everything on your own up front, right? But over time, when you're 3, 6, 12 months into an organization, most of the time you should be able to handle your scope of work pretty independently. And some roles are more team oriented than others, but when you're given a simple analysis to do, you don't want to always have to go to someone else to ask questions for help on troubleshooting your code and all kinds of other things that you might need to ask. You want to become at least somewhat independent. But here's so these 3 things kind of are trade-offs with each other. There's a trade-off there where, okay, I could become more accurate by reaching out for help. I could become more timely and reach this deadline quicker if I reach out for help. I could become more accurate if I take more time, but that's going to take away from the timeliness. And so when you think about those 3 elements that you need to balance, in general, accuracy should be number 1. If you don't feel it's accurate, you either need to, and our recommendation would be try to go to someone for help, or if that's not an option, push out the deadline. Accuracy number 1, and then timeliness. You want to hit that deadline. And so if it's between, well, I really want to be able to do this on my own and be independent, but I've got this deadline coming up and I'm going to miss it if I don't reach out, hit the deadline. And then over time, with experience, hopefully you're able to become more independent and do all 3 of these things. Do the analysis right, get it done on time, and do it generally fairly independently. That's a really solid analyst right there. But those should be your priorities when you're facing those trade-offs. That's my opinion. I think a lot of others would agree with that too. The next video we have here, maybe seems irrelevant in some ways, but honestly, it's one of the most important, a very important success factor as an analyst is having a good attitude. You are going to face situations most likely where you have more work than you can actually do yourself. So the way you handle that is so important. Some people are going to be overwhelmed by that, and it can impact your attitude, right? I can't blame you if you're feeling overwhelmed. It can be not a happy situation, and it can easily let that show. And it goes back to maybe the project management can help with that if you've got a really good tracking system and regular cadence with your stakeholders, so you can let them know that there's more requests than your bandwidth and get on the same page with what you're going to prioritize. A lot of times you can avoid getting overwhelmed, but then there's other things that come up that could lead to a bad attitude. Just, I think about a bad attitude, things are not going your way for one reason or another. Maybe it's being overwhelmed because you're getting too many requests, or maybe you didn't get the feedback on an analysis that you wanted to. All kinds of things. Maybe it's something personal, right? But you're going to work, whether it's remote or in person, and you show up and maybe you let it show. Now, everyone has a bad day now and then, right? So if this happens occasionally, and if it just kind of comes across as, they seem a little down today, it's not that. It's okay. It's something that happens, right? But if you let it go to the point where the way you respond to others now it's impacting that level. It's not just you look a little down. It's maybe now you're giving people the cold shoulder, or you're a little bit more resistant to working with others, that type of thing. now it's really impacting your work. And I mean, people understand when someone needs help, like we were talking about before, the independence piece. I need some help. Okay, I'll help you. You don't want that to, you don't want to become a crutch or let someone else become a crutch, but that's okay, right? But when you start get a point where you put walls up and it becomes really hard to work with you because of your attitude, because it's not just like you're feeling down, but it's almost like there's some passive aggressiveness or some or just aggressiveness there, or just a wall. Now it's really impacting your effectiveness and your team's effectiveness. It can, especially if you're a manager and you're showing that bad attitude and letting it impact you. Now it can impact the kind of day that your direct reports are having, depending on how you respond to them. So it can almost have a snowball effect. You don't want that, right? You want to have a positive impact on the people that you're working with and your team members. So it's really important to have a positive attitude. And so we talk about how you can do that, and different ways that you can try to come back to and have a good attitude at work, even when things aren't going the way you hope they would. We have some quite a few shorts here from some of our different videos, so that's what these are. And again, you go into the playlist here, you get a whole lot more videos that deal with soft skills. And what you're seeing here are some shorts that were taken from some of the other previous videos for specific areas. So if you wanted to know when to say no to a request, here's a 1-minute clip that focuses on that. And it, I believe, comes from this prioritization video. So that's what those are, little shorts. All right, so back to our main page here. And again, if anybody has any questions, we'll be happy to stop and take a look at those. Just checking here to make sure I'm not missing any. Yeah. All right, well, those are soft skills. Lots of videos on soft skills. And then we have some videos that deal with just the general analytics and data science career path. Some of the videos we've already talked about, so certainly the soft skills video that, again, deals with the 3 different stages: aspiring analyst, early in career analyst, and then analysts that are trying to become a senior analyst or manager. This covers all of those different levels, so very relevant to the career analyst career path. Becoming a leader, that roadmap, also very relevant. Now here's an interesting one though, that I don't know that we've talked about yet. This video, Analytics Career Path, deals with all or a lot of your titles that you'll see out there for analytics and data science related roles. A lot of titles that you'll see, some of the most common ones I've seen. And so we talk about what each of those levels mean. So going from junior analyst to senior analyst, analyst 2, analyst 3. Sometimes you see junior data scientist, senior data scientist. What's a data engineer? What's an analytics team lead, manager? What's a chief analytics officer? Just all the different roles that you could potentially have, and what that career path could look like. That's something that anybody in analytics and data science should probably be thinking about. What do they want that? What are they working toward? What do they want that analytics career path to look like for them? A lot of people start out as an analyst, or maybe a junior analyst in some cases, and some of them want to just become more and more technical, have no interest in managing people. That's okay. You can certainly grow that way. They might want to become a data engineer or a data scientist, and then perhaps someday a principal data scientist, a leader in the field. And so that might be their growth path. Others might, as quickly as possible, want to go over here to the analytics leadership route. I want to go from being an analyst to managing a team of analysts. And so that's what they're working toward. They're less interested in maybe learning data science skills. This is a great video to watch to kind of see a lot of what's available out there. Well, if you weren't convinced to be an analyst or data scientist already, watch this video. I go through 10 of the benefits that I've seen of being an analyst. I'm sure there are many more, but there's at least 10. And these are good benefits. Just reminds me, just for me, what a blessing it is to be an analyst. It is. I've been doing it for 13 years, and it's been amazing. So it's not for everybody. Some people, any kind of desk job is off the table. They want to be outside, and I get that, especially on those nice days. And others, maybe some aspects of the analytics career path look appealing. Maybe they do like the idea of a desk job, or there's usually pretty good compensation that comes with being an analyst, especially a data scientist or a management level. So they might look at that and say, wow, that looks pretty good. Let me get into that industry. But then when they actually get into it and start doing maybe some coding or analysis, maybe it's not really something they're passionate about. They find it boring or frustrating. Most people are probably going to find it frustrating at first, especially if you're coding, trying to work through things. But there's going to be, it's like what they say, no pain, no gain. There's usually frustrations learning anything. But if you don't find yourself enjoying it consistently, it might not be the best career path. A lot of times, if you don't enjoy the work that you do, you're probably not doing it that well either, right? And there's exceptions, but it's really important that if you're going to go into this field long term, it's something that you enjoy. There's other career paths that are well paying, and there's other career paths that are desk jobs, that are indoor jobs too, if that's what you're looking for. But you want to find something that you enjoy. It's going to be really hard to be in this role without actually enjoying it, and especially doing well at it too. And then it's just an uphill battle. But boy, there are so many. That being said, there are so many reasons that if these reasons kind of resonate with you, that being an analyst could be a great career path. So many reasons, and a lot of people really do fall in love with it. It's almost like something that they would just do for fun. A lot of people do data analytics for fun, and those are the type of people that, again, this could be a great career path for, where they actually go to work and they enjoy it. This is something they do on the side for fun, even when they're not being paid. If you can then, of course, get a job doing that where you are being paid, well, come on, that's pretty cool. And that's kind of how I feel about data analytics. I really, really enjoy it. But be careful. It can be addicting. It certainly can be. I mean, there is no shortage of analysis to be done out there. Oh, boy. We talked about the importance of a good attitude. Again, very important for your career path. One more thing I'll say here is, again, especially if you're just down a few days, or even just you're sad, that's one thing. But if you let it really impact the way you're interacting with others, and that's happening even one time, that's kind of severe, can really set you back. Where when people are talking about promotion decisions, they're just going back to that. Well, what about that one time? That was really unprofessional. I don't know if we want to put that person in a management role or a senior role, right? So you really want to eliminate that, and hopefully most people get it that, maybe one time it's not too severe. If it doesn't happen over and over again, that was just a tough day for the person. But telling you, the fewer the better, right? You don't want you don't want to make a habit of letting your attitude impact your work. Balancing priorities, another important thing to do in your career path. We've talked about presenting data. All of these are things, there's some soft skills here, but they're going to impact your career as well. Let's see. Sometimes when you're looking at roles for your career, you've got to delineate between this analyst role that is not really a quantitative analyst role versus the ones that are. So at least in the past, I think companies are maybe becoming a little bit better about the way they title things, but it can still be a little confusing where you look at an analyst role, sales analyst, or just general analyst, and it could mean anything. I mean, an analyst role could mean that you're in a call center and you're taking customer support calls, and you're a customer support analyst. And so obviously, if you're learning SQL and Power BI and Python and data science, that's a little different of a role than like customer support role. So how do you identify what's really a quantitative or data analyst role? Well, we talked through some keywords to look for, and then obviously once you open up the job description, you see the tools that are used. That's another way you can tell whether this is a really quantitative analyst or some other kind of analyst, because the term analyst gets used a lot these days. And then, of course, 8 industries where it's used as well. And you can see a lot more if you just open up this video too. All right, well, then we get into, so we've talked a little bit about tools in our definitive guide to data analytics. We've got other videos that go into these tools even more. But what about the techniques within those tools? Some techniques can be applied in a variety of tools. Like you could implement an A/B test in a lot of different tools. Well, if these are the tools that you use, Excel, Power BI, Python, SQL, this playlist down here, Analytics and Data Science Techniques, are the ways that you analyze data within those tools. Okay, so we've got A/B testing, really the best way to assess whether the impact an initiative is having. It's kind of like a controlled experiment. I'm randomly going to select some observations, and that can mean on different things depending on the experiment or the business context, but randomly selecting, usually 50-50 split is going to give you the best read, but you can do 80-20 split if you want to be more conservative and say, well, I only want to impact 20% of the population. You might randomly select 20% of the population. They're your test group. The remaining 80% are your control group. And by randomly selecting observations for each group, in aggregate, they are exactly the same by definition, especially if you've got plenty of volume in there. You have separated them in such a way where everything in aggregate is similar, is the same in aggregate. And so when you introduce a treatment to the test group, maybe it's a marketing initiative, maybe it's a sales call, something that you want to test the impact of, then you monitor the difference between these groups in your target KPI, maybe it's sales or whatever metric you think you're trying to impact. You monitor the difference across these groups. That difference has to be attributable to the treatment. Removing noise. There's always going to be a little bit of variation, and you can kind of assess that as well with a t-test, and you can use regression for that as well. But when you randomly select 2 groups, you introduce one thing to the one group, not to the other. It's a scientific experiment. The difference between the groups going forward is what you can attribute to that one thing that you changed. This is a control perfect way to assess things. And the thing is, if a test isn't set up that way and an initiative is rolled out to everybody, you're left with a pre-post read perhaps. Well, before we introduced this change to everybody, we were growing at this rate. Now we're growing at this rate. I guess the difference is what's due to that thing. Well, maybe, but there's also the economy changing and all kinds of other things that are changing at the company. That pre-post analysis is not ideal. And sometimes perhaps the groups are not strategically, they're not randomized of who's participating and who's not. It's based on, well, people in this criteria are going to receive this treatment, or people who decide to pursue this are going to get this treatment. Sometimes it has to be that way. That's a little trickier than an A/B test because now there's some selection bias there. And so what a lot of analysts will do is compare the participants who went through that treatment to the ones who didn't. But if that process if they weren't randomly determined who was going to go through that treatment and who wasn't, then there's probably some selection bias there where those groups are not apples to apples. And so when you start comparing their trends over time, it could just be something related to the selection bias rather than the treatment itself. So there's different ways of teasing that out. You can use something called a synthetic control model approach. It can be good, but it's a lot harder and it's less accurate, at least, than a true A/B test. So that's why I'd highly recommend doing an A/B test. Very popular for website development and other things as well, direct mail campaigns, a lot of things that A/B testing can be used for. Sometimes you have to get creative with it in terms of how you deploy it, but usually there's a way to do some kind of an A/B test on the change that you're looking at. So in website, for instance, they might take 50% of their web traffic and randomly assign and show a blue button to them and another one sees a red button, and they're trying to figure out if they want someone to click that button, what's the difference in click rate when we showed to the random group that we showed a blue button to versus a red button to. And whichever group does the best, whichever group has the highest click rate, eventually they'll make a call and say, all right, red had a 10% higher click rate, we're going with red. And now you just increased your click rate by 10% by doing an A/B test, and what an impact that could have. So that's just one example of A/B testing in a website context. Well, another technique that you can apply in all kinds of tools, you can do this in Excel, Alteryx, but I highly recommend doing data science in R, Python, or SAS. I would call these advanced analytics coding tools. And especially my preference, my recommendation would be Python. It's becoming more and more popular. It's open source, free, like R is. But I think more and more are switching to Python. It's a general purpose language, so it can generally do more, and it sometimes is more computationally efficient, able to run on larger data sets. So if you want to learn Python, here's our video on Python. But again, data science can be applied in a lot of different tools. So we do a quick overview, just data science principles in general here, the types of models that you'll see in data science. Believe it's a 3-minute overview, so it's very quick. And then if you want to do a deeper dive on data science, and this illustrates the concepts in Python, but it's goes over concepts that are relevant for data science in any tool. Check out this data science video right here, and that's going to be your more exhaustive data science training, going through building a college football prediction model, which could be a pretty interesting use case for some. Here we go through 8 techniques that an analyst or data scientist should know. Things like grouping data, exploring data, A/B testing, data science. So this is a good, just quick overview of different techniques that you often find yourself doing as a data analyst. I think data visualization is one of them. Here we go through 4 types of projects and kind of the process of how you might use multiple tools on some projects as well. So if you're just looking for, what does a data analyst really do? When we talk about being a data analyst, what kind of requests are we talking about on a daily basis that we're going to get? And how will we address those requests? What does that life cycle of a project looks like? We go through 4 projects here. It can give you a pretty good idea. Net present value, this is more of a finance technique, but it's an analytical technique as well, so it kind of goes together. It's this idea of taking future cash flows but discounting them, because technically future cash flows are worth less than cash flows today, because generally if you have the cash today, even if you wanted to spend it in the future, if you have it today, you can usually invest it at some kind of rate, risk-free rate, that allows you to earn interest and have more money in the future. So it's important to consider when you're performing an investment that if you invest a certain amount today and you're going to get some cash flows in return in the future, well, let's really compare whether we could have just done better by taking that money today, that investment, just investing it in a CD, for instance, and getting kind of a risk-free rate of return instead. So net present value helps you do that. We go through the process in there. And then this is maybe more of a tool, but this is how to use an XLOOKUP to do something kind of like a join in SQL or a merge in Pandas. That's a pretty neat function that can replace your VLOOKUP and an HLOOKUP. So check out that one if you're interested. We have a few shorts here. Yep, and then we get into our, oh boy, we'll eventually talk about our analytics lifecycle series when you're really getting into it, and what are some of the challenges that you face when you're building data science models, and that's collaboration with my friend Gary. And so check out our analytics lifecycle videos. We've got a whole playlist here on them. We had a lot of fun putting that together. Just checking to see if we have any questions here. Nope. All right, so that is our analytics and data science techniques playlist. Again, there's probably even more if you click on this to see the whole list of techniques we've got here. All right, go back here. Data analyst and data science project walkthroughs. So a lot of analysts find it pretty helpful to see a real example. It goes back to this video right here, a day in the life, 4 types of projects. What does analytics actually look like? So if you want to see analytics applied, this is a great playlist for you. We started off with a college football kind of prediction or analysis in Excel. We build an investment banking model in Excel, like a financial forecasting model that might help a company assess how purchasing another company would impact their income statement, their balance sheet, the type of analysis that an investment banker would probably be doing. So if you want to see what that could look like in Excel, that's a good one. Building a budget in Excel, and we do this in 2 steps. One where we do like an overall budget, another one where we do kind of a more granular, I believe, monthly budget where you can look at your budget, but then also your actual, see the delta, and just breaks it out further. So we take it a step further in part 2 here. But those are, a couple of things you can do with Excel. Excel's really good for that. Anything where you have inputs and you want to be able to update those and see how the rest of it changes, Excel is hard to beat. You could probably set up a dashboard to do that as well. You could set up Python to do that where you have some parameters at the top, but Excel just makes it a whole lot more visual all in one. So I wouldn't generally recommend Excel for your more exhaustive analysis, but if you're building something like a financial model, a lot of times Excel is a good tool for that. Then we have a few kind of videos where I'll ask a question for you to think about how you would analyze it, and then I'll walk through how I would analyze that myself. And there could be more than one right answer, but at least you've got one potential solution. So one is, how do you provide visibility into sales performance? What are some ways that you might want to set up that dashboard? Another one is, how do you assess the impact of marketing spend on sales? Maybe this might be relevant, this A/B testing. Again, there's a few ways of doing that, so this video walks through, I think, a few ways in that case. But these are good questions for you to maybe think about and then kind of watch the video and think about whether it aligns. And again, you might have come up with another really good method. So this is by no means the only way you could look at these things. A way you could apply data analytics in the sales space, especially to create a sales prioritization model where you help your sales team figure out who the customers are that they should be focusing on. That is a huge way you can add value as a sales analyst. So check out that for more details on how you might do that. And then this just walks through a whole bunch of different use cases, how you can apply analytics to budgets. We have a whole couple videos on that that we just talked through, sports and beyond. So those are some project walkthroughs, and then this one walks through creating a predictive model to predict which team's going to win a college football game and by how much. So obviously that's our video that we use to train on data science, but it does it through a project walkthrough, predicting college football games. The sequel one, that was an interesting one where we thought it might be interesting. Again, this is our video to teach SQL from scratch, but we're doing it through the process of creating an analysis. And so in this case, we're analyzing whether, I believe it was whether when weather is nicer. When the weather's nicer, does the stock performance is stock performance higher? Does weather positively influence the return on stocks that day? I just thought it'd be interesting to look at that. So we do that all while learning SQL. Just one example of what you can do there. And then we create a weather seasonality index when we're teaching Python in this video here. Again, there's lots of other projects here that you can take a look at if you're looking for what does analytics really look like? Can you walk me through an analytics project? Especially if you're an aspiring analyst, you may have some ideas of what that means, but what does it really look like to run an analysis? These videos will give you lots of ideas. And sometimes people call these portfolio projects. This is a great thing to do, especially if you don't have any prior experience and you're applying for jobs. Create a, maybe even these days, a lot of people will create oftentimes it can be free, a website that shows your portfolio projects. So people can look at that website and get a sense for what you're capable of and some of the creativity you've applied end to end, maybe even your code, maybe you link to your GitHub and they can actually go in and see the code you've written. What a great thing to be able to show people, especially if you've done analysis, if you haven't had formal analytics experience in the past. All right, well, I'll stop there for briefly. Do we have any questions? If we have questions, I want to make sure that I'm answering those. So if you have a question, leave it in the chat and I'd be happy to answer it. We're just going over some of the videos on the YouTube channel here as kind of a backup topic. But I'm here to answer your questions. Again, nothing specific, personal, or company related or sensitive, but just high-level questions about technical challenges you're facing, analytics soft skills, or career advice. I'm here to answer your questions. So put them on the chat if you've got them. And if not, I'll continue walking through just some of the videos we have available. All of the playlists that we've walked through, each of these kind of sections is a playlist so far. But then you get to this section at the bottom, and these are playlists in of themselves. So if you click on any one of these, if you want to see, this is basically for Excel. If you want to see all of our Excel videos, you just click on this, and I'll pause that, but you've got all of our different Excel videos here. We've got
now
quite
we're
a
going to
few
get
of them.
into our first Excel.
You would think that I'm an advocate for running analysis in Excel based on all the Excel videos I have here. There's quite a few of them, but really, again, I recommend using coding tools most of the time. But there are the occasional use case like building a budget where it does make sense, financial forecasting where it makes sense. So we've got a whole playlist for Excel. Check out this one, the t-shirt one. We've even got an Excel joke here. But all of those are kind of specific to a particular platform. So we've got a whole playlist of Excel related things. If you want to get better at Excel, check out this playlist. If you're really trying to learn Power BI, we've got our Power BI trainings grouped in this playlist. Likewise with SQL. Now I don't think I have too much on the Power BI training here. I've got a very exhaustive one right here, and then a high-level overview of Power BI. So it's really mainly this
versus what it is for that specific
4-hour video
highlighted portion.
when it comes
in some
to
cases that might
Power
make
BI
sense,
training that
but
I
this
offer.
is where we can change.
Sorry if that was echoing there. But then when it comes to SQL, we have a very, very large SQL library here. You've got your your introduction, again, that teaches SQL through the process of looking at the impact of weather on stock market performance. But then we start covering some more advanced topics. In fact, this topic right here, joining and unioning tables, I decided to just go ahead and show how to do this in both SQL and Pandas in the same video. This concept of joining tables together applies in SQL, it applies in Pandas, which is a package for data manipulation within Python, but it applies in R and SAS and all kinds of other tools as well, Alteryx. And so this concept, when I think about joining or merging, you're joining two tables together horizontally, usually to get more columns. Maybe you've got a customer ID in this table and you want to find out more about the customer, so you go to the customer table. So that's an example of joining or merging. And then unioning or concatenating, depending on the platform you're using, it might be called differently, but SQL would be called a union. That's like a vertical stacking of tables. I need more rows. Think about taking a worksheet from Excel and copying the data and putting it at the bottom of another worksheet. Usually you want the columns to be the same. So we talked through that concept that applies to SQL and others as well. And then we go into some more advanced concepts like writing queries within a query, which can be done through a subquery kind of within the query, or setting up a common table expression or a CTE at the very top, and then building off of those. So that's a really neat concept that increases the flexibility and the efficiency of your SQL writing, where you can write queries within queries essentially. The having clause is great for filtering on aggregated data. Ranking, creating a rank column and all the things you can do with that, like deduplicating your data, that is a good thing to know. More of an intermediate to advanced function there. The coalesce function can replace null values automatically with another field's value if there's a null value in the original column, or just with a value like missing or 0 if you wanted to. So coalesce is a really good one that not every analyst learns, but it's very helpful. We have one all around date functions. Now, date functions can be different depending on the form of SQL you're using. This is focusing on the date functions available in SQL. Some of them will be relevant to a lot of different versions of SQL, but these date functions would work in SQL Server and Snowflake. I think maybe T-SQL or Transact SQL is really what this is relevant to. Lag and lead window functions. This is a neat concept of being able to reference the prior value of a column or the next value of a column, maybe to calculate something like year-over-year growth, which is very common. Then we talk about this concept of creating a slowly changing dimensional table, which is huge when you're trying to create a data science data set, a modeling data set without data leakage. It's so nice to have a slowly changing dimensional table that shows you the values that a column might have had over time. So you can go back and recreate values as of a certain date. That helps you avoid data leakage in your data science model when you're coding out your modeling data set, and that is so important. So then we go into looping. This is a concept that is really neat. For a while I thought that I needed to import my data into something like R, Python, or SAS in order to loop. But it turns out that at least in SQL Server, you can loop right within there and iterate over things. And so instead of copying and pasting code and just changing one or two things, you could just loop through values and substitute a different value into your query each time. It's really cool. We go through some good use cases for data exploration in that video. And then I've included some of our previous analytics office hours where we've talked about SQL concepts like aliases and chart index and substring, which is a really neat way to parse out certain parts of a string column. There's so many SQL functions that can really make your data manipulation flexible. If you can dream it, you can usually build it in SQL, and if not SQL, then probably Python or R or SAS. So it's worth learning, and SQL is one of those things that can be used in just about any other analytics tool. And so, you're brand new to it, start with this SQL tutorial for beginners. And if you want to build and learn some intermediate to advanced concepts, keep going through the rest of this playlist. It is just for you. And if you're kind of at a basic point right now where you know a lot of the basics, maybe you might browse through this, or you could just skip over it completely and you watch some of these videos for things that you haven't heard of before. If you don't know what coalesce is, for instance, you might watch the coalesce video here and so forth. That's our SQL training video. And we've got several other playlists for different types of tools as well. So again, you get the idea here. We've got one for Excel, Power BI, SQL, Python, data science, and so forth. So just very topical here. So consider checking those out for the particular tools that you'd like to learn. We've tried to organize these videos for you. As you can tell, some videos are relevant for multiple buckets. And so what we've tried to do here is, if you're just coming to the channel to learn Power BI, you can easily do that. Or Python, you can easily do that. Or soft skills, you can do that. So come in, figure out what you're really focused in, and hopefully there's a playlist for you there. And we've got a few others that maybe we can talk through next week if we don't have any questions. But I want to thank you for attending today. And if you're watching in the future after the fact, thank you for watching. Hopefully you can join us in the future for another Analytics Office Hours. Hope you have a great week. Thanks for coming.